Hi, my name is Bryan Coley. I am the Chief Creative Officer of Real Experiences. And this time of year, people often refer to me as the Movie Whisperer. And that's because I have this huge passion to look at the nominees for Best Picture for the Oscars each year. And I like to look and see how the themes that come out of these movies collectively actually speak into our story as a culture, as a country, and especially this year as the world. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about my premise of why I think the Oscars are so relevant, then you can go down in the description of this video and there's a link there to a video where I explain my premise. Also in the description is a link to a video in which I reveal this year's biggest theme coming out of the Oscar nominees. It's what I call territorialism, or this land is my land. And I use movies like West Side Story, Dune, Belfast, Power of the Dog to give us a picture of how characters are marking their territory in these movies, and also give us a picture of how this is actually playing out right now in our world with the war in Ukraine, in which Putin has decided to mark the Ukraine as his territory and say that the Ukraine is his land. Now, also in this video, I alluded to the fact that I think there is hope. There's a path. There's even a solution coming out of these Oscar nominees that could possibly confront this idea of territorialism and even be a solution for the war in Ukraine. Now, even as I say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to come across as prescriptive or, fortune telling. I definitely don't want to be like, oh, I'm fortune telling what's going to happen, anything like that. And the last thing I want to be is insensitive or even tone deaf to the fact that there is real pain, real destruction, real death going on in the Ukraine right now. And I don't want to be this guy on the other side of the ocean sitting here going, well, let me give you a solution. Let me give you hope. Let me be this Pollyanna optimist. That is not what I want to do when I present this next theme. Instead, if there is any hope coming out of this, I want it to be that expectancy or that desire or that picture that hopefully this good will happen, or hopefully maybe this could happen. So that's what I want you to hear as we explore this next theme, which I call hope in the BETWEENAGERS. Now let me explain. So never before in the history of the Oscars, I'm trying to make this really dramatic, but it is, I've never seen in the history of the Oscars, as best as I can tell, that almost every nominee, in this case, 9 out of the 10 nominees for Best Picture, have characters who all share one trait in common. Like they are all this one thing, and that one thing is being young. So they are all young people. Like all these major characters in these movies are young people. Let me go through the list. So you start off with the youngest, which is a 9-year-old boy in Belfast. And then you quickly move to a teenage girl who's the major character in Coda, teenage boy who's the major character in Dune, 2 teenage boy and girl who are the major characters in Licorice Pizza. You've got 2 teenage girls, Venus and Serena Williams, who are the main characters in King Richard. You got a whole mess of teenage boys and girls in West Side Story. You've got a teenage, well, maybe an early 20-something boy in Power of the Dog. You've got a little bit older 20-something in Drive My Car. And then finally, you round it out with a graduate student, 20-something graduate student in Don't Look Up. I mean, isn't that amazing that all these movies focus on young people? And I want to take it one step further. They all have something else in common. They are young people who are change agents in their world. So this is what's really cool, is in a world that's defined by a lot of territorialism, you have young people crossing barriers and crossing that, marking the territory. They're the ones crossing the line and becoming change agents in their world. But really the impact that I want to show you is what these characters are doing in their worlds, all right? How they're bringing about change, or what they're doing specifically as young people in these worlds. So let's start with the youngest. And I think it's important that he is the youngest. So as this 9-year-old boy in Belfast, you see him being our lens to look at this older generation, specifically his parents, but he's looking at his parents and his parents' parents and seeing how they're navigating war. Now let's move on to Dune. You have a teenage boy, and he is thrust into leadership. And he's thrust into leadership right at the point in which this evil force is coming and marking the territory, this planet, as their own. So he's in the middle of war and stepping into leadership. And what does he do? He crosses the lines between his people and the native people, the people who actually own the land. He makes an alliance with these people and actually forms a resistance with them. All right, here we go with West Side Story. In West Side Story, guess what you have again? Warring factions. You have war between two gangs, two clans, and you have two people, these two teenage, Maria and Tony. And what are they doing?
I'm not Puerto Rican.
Is that okay?
They're crossing over the line, the battle lines of these two warring factions, and they're finding love with each other. So they're the change agents because they're able to cross over their lines and be the people in between, the betweenagers between these two warring factions. All right, in Don't Look Up. So in Don't Look Up, you have a 20-something graduate student. So the younger person there is identifying the impeding threat to the world. So she's the one who finds that there's a comet coming towards us and it's going to destroy our nation. So what does she do? She steps up and she starts speaking out against this impeding threat and ultimately trying to wake up this apathetic world that they're on the risk of annihilation. In Power of the Dog, now this is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you haven't seen the film, you want to kind of probably skip over, but behind the scenes, the young person is taking out this kind of Putin-like character who has this toxic masculinity, who's constantly marking his territory throughout the whole film. Well, it's the young person who eliminates them. In Drive My Car, the young person is a young woman helping the main character process loss, process grief, and ultimately figure out the culpability in it all. And then in the last 3 films, you have young people who are changing their world by crossing barriers. So in Licorice Pizza, you have a character who's a young 15-year-old boy, and he's crossing this huge barrier of age by falling in love with this 25-year-old girl. In Coda, you have a teenage girl who is crossing over the barrier of language. So she's the only hearing member of her family who is a mom and dad and brother who are all deaf. And so she has to be the one who stands in between the world of the hearing world and the deaf world of her family. And finally, you have King Richard, in which you have 2 teenage girls who are crossing over barriers of ethnicity, race, and class. And so you have this true story of Venus and Serena Williams. They're 2 teenage girls growing up in Compton.
How come I've never heard them?
They're from Compton.
It's okay. They're just not used to seeing good-looking peoples like us.
Yet they're trying to cross over into this world of tennis that's predominantly white and rich. And yet think about it. Think of this as a true story. So you see how they've become change agents and legends in the world of tennis. So to summarize, and I have to use my notes for this. In these movies, it is young people who are perceiving the cost of war. It is young people who are leading and making alliances to form a resistance within war. It is young people stepping over battle lines for the sake of love. It is young people identifying the threat and waking up the apathetic in the face of annihilation. It's young people subtly eliminating the toxic bad guy. It's young people helping to process loss, and young people who are helping us process culpability, and young people who are crossing barriers of age, language, ethnicity, and class. Wow. I wrote wow. To me, this is hope. It's a picture of what possibly Gen Z could do for us this year. It might even be a picture of how this war is ended. Now, I don't want to be that fortune teller. I don't want to be that Pollyanna optimist, especially in the face of all this death and destruction in the world. But to me, this could be a path for hope. It could be a picture, all of these movies being a picture of how Gen Z could actually be a part of being change agents for our world right now. And it's not too impossible. I mean, if you think about it, most wars are stopped by young people, right? Protesting. If we look at the 60s, you see the youth movement of the 60s, and what leads to the end of the Vietnam War is young people protesting. In my mind, it is the young people who are the change agents right now. So what do we do? I'm a Generation Xer. What do I do with this? Or if you're a boomer, even maybe a millennial. Well, to me, the call is to elevate these Gen Z voices. I always look at the Oscars, and the thing that it does for me is it puts antennas up for me. So throughout the whole year, all I'm doing is thinking about how do I play a part, or how do I, as a person, are sensitive to these themes playing themselves out. So now for me, as a dad who has a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, man, this year I'm going to be trying to promote them as being these change agents. I'm going to try to encourage them to step into leadership. I'm going to try to encourage them to be more vocal. I'm going to try to encourage them. Think of how much we have been an us versus them and all this territorialism. And to me, it's great hope to think that maybe it is our young people who will actually help us become a we right now. So that is the theme I see in this year's Oscars that provides a sense of hope. And thank you guys for watching this video. And again, we're going to be doing a live stream on March 27th at 7 p.m. It's on YouTube, and just search Real Experiences and you'll find us. And we'll see you then, and we'll talk a lot more. I'm going to bring in some guest speakers to talk about all these themes and unpack them even further. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.